our Executive Director, Jeff Kelly.
I'm here.
Okay. And if our other commission members join us, we'll get them in on the roll call. I need a motion for approval of the September 19th, 2021 meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Okay. I'll second the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Executive Director report, Mr. Kelly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. It's been a pretty active month since we've last met. We had 9 different incidents. All of them were tobacco related, but they were kind of across the board relative to tobacco. Of the 9 incidents, 10 people ended up being charged for various violations. The violations resulted in seizures of contraband or otherwise illegal other tobacco products in the amount of 30,281 individual sticks or packages of OTP, other tobacco products, and almost 33,500 packages of unstamped cigarettes. So it's been a pretty significant month, and that's a lot of, not just a lot of activity, but a lot of product which is consistently out there that we've been able to take off of the streets and hold some people accountable for that. I'd also like to report, if I may, on some meetings that we have coming up. You and I, Mr. Chairman, we had one meeting this past week with Mr. Will Tilburg, who's the Executive Director of the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission. And that was in anticipation and before a meeting that we're having next Tuesday. The chairman and I will be meeting with the Senate committee, that's a work group for the legalization or the adult use of cannabis. And I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go for us or what our direction is going to be, but we'll be prepared to speak on what alcohol and tobacco regulation looks like now and how that might translate into cannabis regulation for adult use, if that's a determination that the General Assembly makes that one becomes legalized in some sense. And secondly, that it becomes a function of what we're going to be doing as well. So we'll have that meeting coming up next week. And lastly, I'd like to just follow up on some of the reports and studies that we talked about last month and what the progress made on those were. Specifically, and I have one that I'll need to add to the list that I failed to put on the agenda. And I'm going to go with number 3 first, if I may, the underage tobacco enforcement. We say underage, but not minor, because as you know, you must be 21 now in order to possess or purchase tobacco products. We completed the report that's required on that. State law requires that we send 5 hard copies to the Department of Legislative Services library. That's been done, and an exact duplicate of it electronically. You each have received, or hopefully should have received, a copy electronically as well. And we sent a copy to each of the presiding officers, as also required by law. And the other 2, which are combined, numbers 1 and 2, the annual alcohol and tobacco report and the brewery production report. While the brewery production report is listed as a separate report, a separate task that we're required to do because it's new as of a few years ago, it's also allowed to be part of the annual alcohol and tobacco report, and so it is. And to give you an update on that report while it's due this month, and it will be done, I'm certain, this month. It's a very lengthy, detailed report. I know I reported on that before. It's packed with a lot of information, and there's some aberrancies this year with it, in that we went through a year of COVID, so the numbers are all askew for a variety of things. And when you get this, you'll see there's a lot of data in it. We're just taking the time to make sure that we can verify these numbers. We have a new computing system, a whole new tax system that we pull some of these numbers from, and they are a little bit different than previous years because of what we just went through. So we're just taking our time to get it right. And we're going to be in good shape when that's done. We're very, very close. It's in the final stages of review. And the last report that I don't have on here is what I would call the Field Enforcement Division of the Alcohol Tobacco Commission, the Field Enforcement Division's annual report, which has a bunch of data about the enforcement activity we did this past year. Again, this is a hybrid report this year because for the first 6 months, we did it for the first 6 months of the fiscal year, we did it as the Field Enforcement Division of the Comptroller. The last 6 months, same work, same people largely, but we did it as the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission. So this year, it's a combined report, and it'll be indicated as such. In years after this, it'll be just simply the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission's report. That report, we just finished the final edit on it yesterday, and I expect it to be published any day now. You'll have copies of that, I'm certain, within a couple of days. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It should be noted for the minutes that Mr. Morset has joined us, and he'll be added to the roll call. At this time, Legal Research Center, Blair Ennis.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks so much for giving me the time to speak today.
So the Maryland Department of Health conducted a youth pandemic behavior survey earlier this year from May to June, and the epidemiologist at MGH who's been working with the data wasn't able to attend today. So I'm going to be sharing just a little bit of her data, but it's my understanding that there is more that MDH is currently going through the approval process to be able to release. So I'm sure that there will be more information coming up in the future, and hopefully coming from MDH. So the objective of this survey was to find out how students are coping during the pandemic. And there were 70 questions total that came from a couple of different Maryland and national youth surveys. And the students surveyed were between the ages of 14 through 19. And so as it relates to tobacco, which is the data that I was given, 11% of students reported using electronic smoking devices, 7% smoked cigarettes, 7% smoked cigarettes, 6% smoked cigars, and then 5% reported smokeless tobacco use. And then of the ESD users, the highest number reported using puff bars, which of course is noteworthy because puff bars are disposable cartridge-based electronic smoking devices, which are not legal to sell in Maryland unless they are menthol or tobacco flavored. So of course it's possible that the flavors that the youth were getting were menthol or tobacco flavored. Although when asked about flavors, the primary flavor used was actually fruit flavors. And then there was this sweets category like chocolate and candy and dessert flavors. And then menthol was third on the list, and tobacco was much further down on the list of flavors that are used. And then the second most used electronic smoking device was Vuse, which again is noteworthy because Vuse is actually the first electronic smoking device that has passed the federal PMTA process. So it's actually been approved by the FDA to be legally sold on the market. It's the first of its kind. So all of this data is also consistent with what we're seeing across the country. The CDC released results of the National Youth Tobacco Survey earlier this month, and among high school students who are current e-cigarette users, the majority said that Puff Bar was their usual brand, and then Vuse was the second most common. And then again, as far as flavors are concerned, fruit was the most common flavor, and then that sweets category of candy, dessert, and other. So the Maryland Youth Tobacco Survey was delayed because of the pandemic, and that's actually part of the reason that they did this pandemic behavior survey. However, MDH is actually fielding questions now, and so we will have more localized information in the coming months. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can, or take questions back to MDH if you have any.
Any of the commissioners have questions? Blair, thank you. I would hope that as the reports come out that they could be sent electronically to Mr. Kelly, and then he can transmit them to us for our review. So we'd appreciate.
I will share that information.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. Do you mind?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, quick question. It's Blair, I'm sorry. Quick question for you, if you don't mind. Who regulates the flavorings and the additives that go into these e-cigarette products?
So the FDA is the federal regulatory body, and to my knowledge, we don't have anyone specifically in Maryland that's doing it.
So no one vets any of the chemicals that are in these products for Maryland residents, is that correct?
Right.
Thank you.
Other questions from anybody else who's listening in on the call?
I could just pitch in a little. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
It's Dawn Barkowitz. I could just pitch in a little bit of context since I spearheaded this survey before I moved to my new position. Thank you for that overview, Blair. Yes, this was because the Youth Risk Behavior Survey and Youth Tobacco Survey were delayed. We are, by statute, we go into the field the fall of even calendar years, and I felt this was such a crucial time to capture this data during the pandemic. So this was a one-of-a-kind survey we developed in Maryland. And because it was a smaller, just statewide sample, we couldn't compare it to behaviors collected during previous surveys, but we did ask the youth from their own standpoint in the survey, did you use X product more or less or the same than before the pandemic? So with both alcohol and tobacco, youth reported that they used tobacco 27% more during the pandemic than prior, and drank alcohol 29% more often than before the pandemic. So just kind of putting that in context a little bit.
And when you say tobacco, you're including all tobacco products, meaning ESDs and like
Yeah.
cigarettes and such, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
you have all tobacco products.
Thank you, Dawn. Appreciate
Mhm.
your input. New business. I can say that I had the opportunity to join Van and go into Prince George's County when they stopped into a 24-hour operation and saw how they looked at the receipts that the business had for products that they had purchased, how they separated them, and then proceeded to confiscate everything else that was illegal, including cigarettes with Virginia stamps on them. It was enlightening. I know, Barbara, you've had that opportunity. It's enlightening to see the opening packages of leaf tobacco and repackaging them. So they sell a package for $6 to $9. They're taking the leaves out, putting them in a plastic bag, selling them for $1. Excuse me? Also, they were selling cigarettes for 75 cents a piece with a sign, which of course is illegal. But I saw how our agents worked and of course counting everything and then having to go back and recount it and calculate what the taxes would have been had they been legal products and sold. And I was very impressed by the professionalism. So I really appreciate Mr. Kelly, the opportunity to ride along.
I can tell you we're happy to have you. And obviously, all commission members, please let us know if you want to do that or if you'd like to do it again. Happy to have you. And it was interesting, I have to say, you got to see something that we've seen for the first time. One thing you mentioned is how brazenly they advertise loose cigarettes, which is extremely illegal. And they advertise it like, as I understand it, it was written on the bottom of a cardboard box that was like containing other tobacco or other tobacco products. Really just very forward. But what was interesting, first time we've seen somebody take loose tobacco leaves and break it down, from a legal product and break it down into selling what we would say is the equivalent of loose cigarettes. In this case, it was loose prepackaged tobacco to make even more money on the volume of this. And I understand even some of what you guys seized on Tuesday was some of the counterfeit tobacco leaf that we had seen and reported on a month ago, where we saw these guys in the house that had their huge trash bags full of leaf product and were putting it in as counterfeit packaging. Even some of that counterfeit packaging was available for sale in the store. So you can just see how prolific it is. We could just spend all day out there with as many agents as we possibly have and just keep doing this over and over again because there's so much money in illegal tobacco. There's so much money in it. And it's it's not a big stigma attached to you when you've been arrested and charged with doing something with tobacco that came from another state or who knows what source. There's just no stigma attached to it. The penalties can be kind of stiff when they're enforced, but it's just too much money in it, and thank heaven so far, not quite as violent as drugs have been, although there's in some areas significant increases in the amount. Really glad to have you. You had a great day. It just happened to be a very lucky day that we were able to get so many different elements of this product.
I think the other thing that was interesting, and I see Betty Buck has joined us, so please note for the minutes she's on. The other thing was interesting was all of the wrappers for coins, and then of course underneath the counter was a big box where all the coins were from selling individual cigarettes and everything else. I'm sure it wasn't reported for tax purposes either.
I'm sure. And it's amazing, just those other little tidbits. All that matters when you go to court. When you testify to the quarters and to the wrappers, when they're selling loose cigarettes at 75 cents each, they're either giving you 3/4 or they're looking for a quarter back from $1. So all of that goes to the probable cause and the indication that that's the type of crime that's being committed. and the more you see there, the more obvious, I guess, is the size of their business. And they have a pretty good business of loose sales taking place.
Mr. Kelly, quick question.
Yes, sir.
So the question is, what is the state threshold before a referral is made to ATF for a CCT violation?
I don't. It's not a state threshold; it's a federal threshold. And I'm going to tell you that it's been years and years and years since I've seen this, but it is somewhere in the range of 60,000 cigarettes, I think, sticks. And so it's quite a lot. And then it's when it's shipped across state lines, as opposed to the criminal enterprise of smuggling. These are people that maybe just packaging and shipping into the state without notifying the state and providing going through other legal framework.
So you did indicate they had counterfeit Virginia tax stamps. Is that correct?
No, we don't think so. The counterfeit, these were just Virginia tax stamps, legit, and we get them quite often. And the closer we are to the to DC and to Virginia in those jurisdictions, the more rampant they are. But although do know they're all over the state. The counterfeit product I was talking about was in last month, I think it was, maybe it was the month before. We reported on, think of the black trash bags, like lawn and leaf trash bags filled with cut leaf tobacco, just bought raw from wherever. And these individuals in their not necessarily so clean establishment were repackaging this and then had labels printed up from actual brand name loose leaf product. Had them printed up at at a commercial printing location as stickers. And we're packaging these bags and placing the stickers on and then selling it as branded product. Clearly was not. And that was the counterfeit product that we saw some of again just this past Tuesday.
Jeff, you also had let me know that the same day I was out with Van and the team that the State Transportation Department or the police that had a truck that they stopped, had contraband in it.
We did. In fact, that day we got I think it was about, just to give you a sense of it, almost 4,500 packs of contraband cigarettes. What the chairman, what he's referring to is specifically, in this case, was the Maryland Transportation Authority Police Department, who work if you will, the toll facilities and other areas. We've been doing this now for 22 years, and we've gotten pretty good at it, and we shared our information whenever we could with our partners in law enforcement, our local agencies, especially the ones that are bordering other states, especially Virginia and DC, and with the Maryland State Police Transportation Authority, DNR, anybody who took any interest at all. We've shared really what to look for. And going back to these quarters again, when you see the quarters, that means nothing. But if you're familiar with this operation, you start to realize that means maybe loose sales are happening. Well, we've provided that instruction to law enforcement. If you see black trash bags that are kind of square shaped or rectangular cube shaped, maybe they contain cigarettes. There's a certain smell to tobacco, as many of you got to see our storage rooms in Annapolis smell for your own selves. So we've trained them for all these things, and now they know exactly what to look for, and they're really good at it. So they make these stops. They see something weird. They know what it is. They know it's a little bit more complex. It's not that they couldn't charge it. They are certainly capable to, but that there's a little bit more complexity to it, that we're experts and they call us. Plus, you got to store this stuff. And not everybody has the space like we do to be able to store that volume of contraband product. But yeah, it was a great day. We had a good day in Prince George's County with you. We had a great day with the Transportation Authority Police as well.
Anybody else have any new business for us? Betty, just so you know, Jeff, you want to tell her about the meeting on the 26th that's coming up?
Sure.
That we're going to sit in on?
You bet. We were contacted by a Senate work group, a Senate committee led by, I believe it's led by Chairwoman Dolores Kelly of Finance.
Okay.
As a work group for cannabis work. So we met with Will Tilburg, and Dawn was at the meeting as well, just this past
Thursday.
I guess it was. What was it, Tuesday?
It was Thursday, I think. I could be wrong.
Oh, sorry, last
week.
Last week, Thursday, for a meeting coming up next Tuesday to talk about cannabis in general. And Dawn, I don't know if you heard me talking about that or not, but I was saying from our perspective, the chairman and I we're not exactly sure what to expect, but we're going to be prepared to talk about how alcohol and tobacco are regulated in the state and how there may be similarities with cannabis if we move forward with an adult use of cannabis and if our commission is somehow involved in that regulation. And Dawn, you may have more insight on what to expect, but I know that the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission will be also speaking about generally just cannabis and what they've been dealing with over.
Yeah, I think the intent is to look at what legalization for adult use would look like, and the regulatory process and where it would live. So talking with the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission as well as the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission makes sense to see potential next steps.
And where's the meeting?
It's virtual.
Okay,
It's where you are. Come as you are, where you are.
okay.
Okay, anybody else have any business to transact today?
So I have a quick
I'm
question
sorry, go ahead.
regarding that. Mr. Chairman, is it anticipated that the ATC
I can't hear anything. Can anyone else?
Robert,
will play legalization of cannabis?
could you restate that, please?
Yes, sir. What do you anticipate the regulatory role ATC would play in the legalization of cannabis?
I can take a stab at that if you'd like.
Sure.
Well, and only because I've seen it over the last 5 years or so. Commissioner Poole, what's happened is when they started even introducing the idea of legalizing cannabis or adult use, or however it's being termed now, the earliest attempts, and it seems like even currently now, not the medical usage of it, but the adult usage, recreational usage, that the earliest intent has been for then the comptroller, now the Alcohol Tobacco Commission, to regulate it very similarly to the way alcohol is regulated. In many states that cannabis is legalized, those states have their alcohol regulators also regulating cannabis. Colorado was one of the first to legalize cannabis. I think they set up their own commission. And again, Dawn, please correct me because I know it's changed. I understand that they have moved away from a sole regulating source and may have joined that with alcohol regulators as well. But others, Oregon, Washington State, have been allowing cannabis use, adult use for years, and it's the alcohol regulators and their commissions that regulate cannabis.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Okay, if there's no other new business, I need a motion for adjournment. Eric, I need a
I'll
second.
move to adjourn.
Eric made the motion, Barbara is second.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Thank you all very much. Have a
Thank
great
you.
week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.